Today, we're going to be talking about when and why you should use the short case feed ramp. Now, we're going to talk about a couple key components that are going to help you better understand how annealing works and sort of what the objective is here. Understanding that this piece of brass and this piece of brass can all be annealed within the Burstfire system. So, if we are able to break this down just a little bit more so you can understand, you can work this to its full capacity. Taking a look at this piece of brass that's oversized so you can best understand what we're talking about. This is the neck of your piece of brass and this is the shoulder. Now, oftentimes people believe that we're just trying to anneal the neck because this is where the bullet seats. But in actuality, we want to anneal the shoulder and the neck. That way, when we are full length sizing, this entire area is impacted and it is annealed back to its original crystallized state, or at least as close as we can potentially get it. Now, if our goal is to anneal this entire area, we don't want the flame all the way up here and we don't want the flame all the way down here. What we want to do is find a centralized point, allowing the heat to spread throughout the piece of brass. Now, understand this is a large piece of brass, but if we were to come down to something smaller, that heat is really going to engulf this entire area. Now that we understand where we want to anneal, let's take a look at some of the components here. First, we have our 360 adjustable swivel. This is extremely important when you consider that we can anneal pieces of brass that go this far out, or we can anneal pieces of brass that come all the way in here. Just not very much space here in order for us to do that. That is the case when we would use the short case feed ramp. Now let's understand a few things here. This is set in millimeters and we're going to do some rough, but we're about 36.09 millimeters on our shortest case. And if we're going to go all the way up to our largest case, we're going to be at about 99.65 millimeters. Now, the actuating door itself, or the distance between the face of the machine and the edge of the actuating door, is about 25 millimeters. Now, what we recommend is if you have cases that are longer than 38 millimeters, then you are going to be okay with keeping it in the position that it currently is. And let's take a look here. We have 48 millimeters. So this case would be fine. But if we were to come down to our shortest case, we're at 36.23 millimeters. And in that case, we would really want to have the short case feed ramp so it would push it out just a little bit more so we can have a slightly easier and better adjustment with our flame positioning so it isn't going to be hitting our actuating door or our wheel. A little bit of heat in this area is fine, but we don't want the flame directly on that. Let's go ahead and zoom in and take a look. Now, our first goal when annealing and using the Burstfire system is to have enough clearance away from the actuating door where we can safely put the flame in between our shoulder and our neck for optimum annealing through the Burstfire system. And as we switch out throughout a few cases here, you can see what this clearance ends up looking like. For most of your long range cases, this is definitely not going to be an issue. But as we move down to our smaller cases, it will. As a reference, we're going to use this cleaning swab that has a pointed end and insert it into the end so you can see as a reference point. And we want to show you exactly what we mean when we talk about positioning. So let's go ahead and put that to the side real quick. And let's go ahead and grab a standard 6.5 Creedmoor case. And as a reference, again, this is 48.60 millimeters. So as this case comes down the system and sets into its holding place, you can see that by moving this 360 head, we can position it wherever we like. remembering that our aiming point is between the shoulder and the neck. Most importantly, you can see the clearance from the actuating door to the mouth of the case. And if we were to measure from the edge of the actuating door to the mouth of our case, we would see that we have about 24.04 millimeters of clearance, which is plenty of clearance for us not to engage on the actuating door and our anodized wheel, and have plenty of room to anneal our actual brass in the position that we want. Now, as we move away from this and we move to, let's say, our smallest cartridge, let's go ahead and move the flame out of the way, you can see that our clearance from the actuating door to the mouth of the case is far less. In fact, if we were to measure from the actuating door to the mouth, we would have about 12.16 millimeters of clearance. And you can see when we go to reposition and anneal, we are extremely close to the actuating door and our anodized wheel. And let's lead this into our second point, having the flame away from our actuating door and our anodized wheel. Remember, when we are close like this and we go to position this flame, this is extremely close to these. And although they do have heat resistance, we want to avoid having it in this position where we could potentially damage any of the actual machinery. By positioning the short case feed ramp, you can see we've now given ourselves more clearance for our annealing process, moving the edge of this piece of brass away from the actuating door and away from our anodized wheel, giving us plenty of clearance. If we were to measure this now from the edge of the actuating door to the case mouth, we would see that we now have 19.81 millimeters of clearance, giving us plenty of room. You can 100% eyeball that. If you put your case in, you can see here that there is plenty of protrusion for your flame to hit your exact contact point of where you want it to be. As we move down with our available cases here, you can see that there is still room here between our actuating door and here where the flame will safely be there. It's really not until we get down to our smaller cases, which is really what this is set for let's say pistol cartridges, or something a little bit smaller, that we can start using our case feed ramp to push this a little bit out. That way we can do there. Now, if you want to see how to install the short case feed ramp, which is extremely simple, go check out our demo video. But for now, this is why and when you would use the short case feed ramp.